Well, good morning, friends. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to have an adventure in pickling. Pickling is not something that I have done previously in my life. I'm just learning how to do it. I didn't really care for the taste of cucumber pickles with all that dill and fennel and peppercorns and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't care for the flavor of it. I've never been a big pickle fan, but I came across this nice recipe in the all-new Ball Book of Canning and Preserving. 350 of the best canned, jammed, pickled, and preserved recipes. It's a really good book, and I highly recommend it if you can get your hands on it. I think you can pick it up on Amazon. Got this real nice spiral-bound version where I can easily flip to what I want to concentrate on. I found these recipes for refrigerator pickles. 4 easy steps. You make a brine, pack your vegetables, you adjust your seasonings depending on the spice profile you want to achieve, and then they suggest what type of vinegar you should use for the particular flavor profile that you're going after. So what I really wanted to do first was make pickled red onions because they're really good. They can be used in salads, on tacos, burgers, sandwiches. Put them on your breakfast, just good for a multitude of purposes. So I did get a recipe to make these, and I made this just with the Mediterranean spices that I used for the vegetables here, and I made this particular batch with the Mexican seasonings. So in this video, I'm going to show you the process for making the pickled red onions with the Mexican spices, and I'm also at the end going to just show you it's the same process, but for this particular batch I made pickled vegetables, and you can see I've got cherry tomatoes, onions, asparagus, I've got green peppers, red peppers, I've got garlic, all kinds of veggies in there. And it makes a beautiful appearance. This would be a really nice gift for anybody. I gave a jar of these this morning to my Pilates instructor because she likes to have her salad with pickled vegetables on top. So there you go. And this even has pickled mushrooms in there. So very delicious. And we are going to go through the entire process making pickled red onion. And I will have the exact measurements for all the ingredients in the description box below. So stick around to the end and I'll let you know how I made the Mediterranean style. I don't have a video on the process, but it's the same process, it's just a little different flavor profile. And the basic process, while we're talking about it, the basic process is you get your vegetables that you want to use, wash them, cut them to the desired size you want, or leave them whole. And then step 3, once you've got the vegetables ready to go, you prepare a master brine. And this is the same for every recipe. 2 cups of vinegar, it depends on the type of vinegar that you want to use, 1 cup of water, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of pickling salt, and that's simply non-iodized salt, and then whatever seasonings from the chart below. Now I did differ my process a little bit from this. What I did was I made a brine, and I put the brine only to warm on the stove. I used the vinegar, water, sugar, and salt. I just warmed it to dissolve the sugar and salt. And the actual seasonings I put right into the jar with my vegetables. I let my brine cool. Now, depending on how soft you like your vegetables, if you want them soft, you can pack your vegetables in the jar and pour the hot brine over them. And that'll soften them a little bit. And this will blanch your vegetables. It will destroy the enzymes that are responsible for the vegetables maturing and spoiling more quickly. So if you're going to plan to have these in your refrigerator for an extended period of time, you might want to consider the hot pack method, which will blanch your vegetables first. But I kind of like crunchy veggies. I kind of like them a little less soft and a little more crunchy. So I'm putting mine in the jars and putting the cooled brine. I'm going to let it warm it up, let the sugar and salt dissolve, then I'm going to let it cool down, and then I'm going to pour it into the jars. And then once you do that, the instruction here for step 4, tightly pack your vegetables, pour the hot master brine over the vegetables to cover, Cover with lid, let stand for an hour, store in the refrigerator for a month, or for best flavor up to 3 months. The longer they stand, the more flavorful they will become. I chose refrigerator pickles because you can do pickles and you can do water bath canning with the pickles to have them shelf stable. But again, the heat processing tends to make the vegetables a little softer. And I don't like mushy pickles. I'd much rather have refrigerator pickles. And we will eat these up pretty quickly, I'm fairly sure. And I have lots of friends that are waiting in line to get jars of these pickled vegetables from me. So for canning your onions, you can prepare them and can them using water bath canning. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to make refrigerator pickles. So when you're making refrigerator pickles, you don't have to be so particular about the acidity levels in the jars because you're not going to be storing them on the shelf. You're going to be storing them in the refrigerator. And I'm going to follow this recipe from the Ball All New Book of Home Preserving. And we're going to use the Mexican recipe that they give here. You can use whatever vegetables you want. You could use bell pepper, carrot, chili peppers, green beans, onions, cucumbers, whatever, but I'm going to use just onions and peppers today. And they recommend fresh lime, fresh cilantro, garlic, chipotle peppers in adobo. Well, I'm not using the chipotle. I'm going to use habaneros. And the vinegar that they recommend is white or apple cider vinegar. So this is a tested recipe from Ball, but it's only tested for refrigeration and not for canning and putting on the shelf. Today we're going to make some delicious pickled onions. We're going to also include some habanero peppers in with the onions. And we're going to make these with some Mexican style flavorings. We're going to use Mexican oregano. We're going to use some lime juice. And the main ingredients you're going to need is, number one, some type of vinegar. You can use distilled white vinegar. That is the most inexpensive option. If you want to go for something a little more fancy with a little different flavor profile, you could go for white wine vinegar, rice vinegar, apple cider vinegar, red wine vinegar, whatever kind of vinegar you have on hand. And I believe for this batch today, I'll probably use white wine vinegar. You're going to also need some distilled water. You can use your tap water if you've got good tap water that doesn't have a lot of minerals. We're going to use 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'm going to use some lime juice because I had 3 limes in my refrigerator and I juiced them. You'll need a little bit of salt. You need to use salt that does not have iodine. This is natural sea salt. There are no additives to this. We have 1 tablespoon of salt. You can also buy pickling salt at the canning section of the store. And I'm going to also put a bay leaf in every jar. I've got red onion. You can use whatever kind of onion you like. Generally, red onion is preferred. I've got 3 red onions actually. I've got a nice yellow sweet onion, a shallot, and we've got about 3 tablespoons of minced garlic. So we're going to add a little bit of that to each jar. So this is pretty quick and simple. The recipe calls for 2 cups of vinegar. This bottle has 16 ounces or 2 cups of white wine vinegar. So I'm going to just put this directly into my pan. Add a cup of water. That's our liquids, except for the lime juice. I'm going to add the lime juice in later because I don't want to heat the lime juice up and cause it to lose its good flavor. So I've got this sugar. And we've got a tablespoon of salt. The next step is to bring this to a boil. We don't actually have to boil it, but we have to have it warm enough that the salt and sugar will dissolve. Now the basic process to this is we're going to load our vegetables into the jar, And we're going to heat our brine solution. We're just going to take the vinegar, water, salt, and sugar and heat it a little bit till the salt and sugar dissolve. Then in addition to our vegetables, we're going to put spices in each jar. And then once our brine cools, we're going to add brine to each jar, and that's it. Then you add it all, put it all together, put a lid on it, and put it in the refrigerator. Very simple. Now, some recipes call for you to make your brining solution and put the spices right in with the brining solution. You can do that too, but I think I'm going to distribute my spices equally among the jars and do them separately from the brining solution. Our brining solution has come to a boil. I'm going to turn off the heat and just stir this until it's dissolved. The sugar and salt should be totally dissolved. And that's just to help it distribute more equally through the jars. Now, some recipes ask you to pour the hot brine over your vegetables. That depends on how soft you want your vegetables to be. You can pour hot brine over your vegetables, or your onions in this case. You can actually soften your onions using hot water, but I like mine to be crunchy when they're pickled. I don't want them to be too soft. So I'm not going to pour anything hot over my onions. I'm going to pack my jars with the raw onions. I'm going to let the solution pretty much cool down before I pour it over my onions. Now, to cut these onions, I prefer to cut them lengthwise. I know some people cut them widthwise, and like as if you're making onion rings, but I prefer to cut them lengthwise. Remove the outer paper skin. And then you just give them a chop this way that sort of goes along with the line of the onion. And you can cut them fairly thinly if you'd like them to be more pickled and soft, or a little thicker if you'd like them to be more firm. Like I said earlier, you can use whatever kind of onions you like. I saw this little bag. They called them pink onions, and I think they're basically red onions. Maybe they're just not quite as big or quite as mature, but they look pretty nice. And you may be asking yourself right about now, what the heck am I going to do with jars of pickled onions? Well, I'm glad you asked. They are very good on your breakfast eggs. They're delicious on hamburgers. They're great on tacos. Put them on any kind of your Mexican dishes, such as enchiladas, whatever you've got. And I like to mix my pickled onions with sour cream and make a dip. So there are a lot of things you can do. You can also use shallots, which I have a leftover shallot here, so I'm going to throw that in with my onions. I'm going to cut it the same way I cut the onions, lengthwise. I find it's easier, and I think it looks nice. It's very easy to peel the onions when you cut them lengthwise. Onions, shallots, or whatever you've got. Okay. Get our shallots chopped. Shallots have a nice flavor profile. They're sort of intermediate between garlic and onions. Okay, so we got the papery skin off. Just going to slice these long ways. And I'm going to put these in a little separate cup because I'm going to put them in the jar separately from the onions. I'll probably put these on top. Okay. Okay, so our brine is cooling. The salt and sugar has dissolved into the vinegar and the water. We're going to load up our jars. We've got our onions and we've separated them, sort of loosely gone through them, separated the individual pieces so that they'll pickle more nicely. And now we're going to fill our jars. So if you've got a funnel, that's great. You can use a funnel. If you don't, you can just, stick them in with your hands. It's not going to bother anything. Might take you a little bit longer. We're going to put these in loosely initially, and then we're going to pack them in pretty well. If you don't pack them well, you're going to need more brine solution. The better you pack them, the less brining solution you're going to need to fill your jars. Okay. I think I'm probably going to be able to do 4 jars here. And if you haven't gotten them loose at the time you're packing them, you can just loosen them as you go. They're so pretty. I love the color of these red onions. Okay, I think that's about 2 of our jars. And they're pretty loosely packed at this point, but remember we have other things we're going to be adding to them. This is a spicy endeavor. And right about now, your eyes may really be watering, but hey, that's part of the fun. It's all part of the game, as they say. So we've got our 4 jars. I've got a little bit more onion here. This is going to work out just nicely. And I like to use wide mouth jars too when I'm doing anything that's pickled, where you have to remove the contents with a fork or with your fingers or whatever. It's just a little easier to get things out of the jars when the jars are wide mouth jars. Okay, so we've got our onions distributed. And we've got a couple of these habaneros to go in each jar. The brining solution makes the peppers not quite as pungent. So even if you are a little bit hesitant about putting peppers into your product here, don't worry too much, because the vinegar sort of takes the heat out of the peppers. Okay. We've got our shallots. Add a few to every jar. I didn't break these up earlier, so I'm doing that now. Okay. Okay, this is looking good. Garlic. We're going to add to each jar about a teaspoon of garlic. These are packed with all my favorite flavors. We're going to put a bay leaf in every jar, so just tuck that down to the side. Basically just use whatever spices you like. I'm trying to include anything that would give you a sort of a Spanish flair in the flavor of the jars. And I think bay leaf fits in okay. We've also got Mexican oregano. If you don't have Mexican oregano, you can use just regular Mediterranean oregano. Okay, whoop. Got a bay leaf in each jar. I'm going to put a few little red pepper flakes, just a little sprinkling. Give it a little color and a little flavor. Maybe about a half a teaspoon per jar. If you have dried Mexican oregano, you can use that. I happen to have a fresh plant in my yard, Mexican oregano. So I'm going to put that green leaves of my Mexican oregano in each jar. Like I said, if you've got regular oregano, or if you want to use dried spices, you can do that. I was really happy when I happened to find my Mexican oregano plant at a nursery. I think I found it at the Huntington Library when they had a plant sale. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't often see Mexican oregano plants for sale. It smells so good. I'm going to load quite a bit of this into there because I just love the flavor of oregano, especially Mexican oregano. Yeah, you have to be careful when you're pickling something because the flavors can be really intensified. And if you don't like the flavor of something and it's used in a pickling solution, you're going to really hate your whole batch that you made. Like, I'm not real crazy about regular pickling, like dill pickles. I don't like the flavor of dill pickles. So I don't use that regular pickling solution that's got fennel and that kind of stuff in there. I much prefer to have a custom spice mix like this. Okay, well, I think that's probably good enough on the Mexican oregano. And I'm not going to put cumin, as I said earlier, cumin or cilantro. I was originally going to put cumin in here, but I'm not going to because I think all I have is ground. If I had the little cumin seeds, I could put those in, but I don't want to put something in that's going to make my brining solution turn funny colors. Okay. So we've got our brining solution. It's still warm. It's cooling. I'm going to add the lime juice right into the brining solution. And we'll just retrieve our funnel. Well, actually, first I'm going to push these down a little bit with the spoon. These could be packed down considerably more than I have them packed here. So just get that pushed down. This one. This is good. This will leave us a little room for some head space in the jars because you want everything to be covered with your brining solution. Did I mention before that I think canning is such a therapeutic activity? I really enjoy it. I really haven't done much in the way of pickling. But since I've discovered these custom recipes in the Ball book, making Mediterranean pickles, making Mexican style, what is the other recipe that they have? Oh, they also have the spicy dill recipe, and they have a Szechuan recipe. You could probably make Mandarin Chinese using your star anise, your 5-spice, that kind of stuff, using rice vinegar. I'll have to try that next time. Okay, so we've got, let me get this out of the way here. Got the funnel. Now we just ladle our brining solution into the jars. Hopefully I've got enough here. If not, I'll have to make more. initially putting 2 scoops in each jar here. And if you like a softer onion, you can ladle this in when it's still very hot. Well, I've almost got enough. I'm going to have to make myself another, I think another batch of the pickling juice. A little bit more, maybe a half a batch, to fill these the rest of the way. I'll have the final measurements in the description box below. Okay, so we whipped up another half a batch here of brining solution. It's a little warm, but that's not going to affect things too much. Okay. Let's see. Well, that's just about right. It's better to have a tiny bit left over rather than having not enough. Okay, so I'm going to press these down a little bit, kind of release any air pockets if there's any in there. Like I said, it's not real critical because we're not going to be water bath canning this. They're just refrigerator pickles, but you still want all your solution to reach every part of your onion. And you want to kind of make sure all your pieces of vegetable are underneath the liquid. It's kind of tough because they do tend to float up. And I think I can add a little more brine to this. So this amount of brine that I made is just about right. There we go. Okay, well, the final measurements of everything will be in the description box below. These can be eaten probably tomorrow. They should be good enough to go. If you can't wait, you could probably give them an hour or so and start eating them right away. But, you know, the longer it waits, the better the flavor merges together. We've got our... You can use your 2-part lids if you want to. I'm just using these no-leak plastic lids. And into the fridge these will go. And we will check them out tomorrow and let you know. Whoops, there's a little piece of Mexican oregano. We'll check them out tomorrow and let you know how they turned out. And here we have our jars of lovely pickled onions. This is the next day. They've been in the refrigerator overnight. You can see they look gorgeous. And I'm sure they taste even better. So I'm going to give these a quick taste test. These are going to be delicious in whatever we have to eat around here. Particularly good for Mexican dishes because of that Mexican oregano. You could put cumin in there. Or you could put cilantro in the jar, whatever flavors you like. I just use Mexican oregano. And of course we've got the habaneros, kind of there in the top of the jar. I'm going to just kind of mix everything together a little bit before I put these back in the fridge. So let me grab one of these pickled onions and give it the old taste test here. Oh, that's wonderful. I really, really like that. That is delicious. It's got a little bit of kick because of the habanero, but not bad. I mean, I'm not one of those people that likes to have the red flaming hot chilies. That is delicious. So these are good in the refrigerator. You can use them in your cooking. You can use them for a condiment. I think you could even probably add these to your salsa if you wanted to make tomato and mix onion with it. This would be really good to make a salsa. I'm going to have to give that a try. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this portion of the video. Now stay tuned and we're going to talk a little bit about how we made Mediterranean pickled vegetables. How are these for beautiful looking jars of vegetables? These are the pickled vegetables that I made about 3 or 4 days ago using the Mediterranean brine recipe. And for these vegetables, I used asparagus, mushroom, onions, tomatoes, little cherry tomatoes. I cut up a zucchini, of course a red onion, some red pepper, and then I used the master brine recipe, which is the 2 cups of vinegar. And for the vinegar for this, I used white wine vinegar and red wine vinegar combination. And then I used also the water, of course, a cup of water for every 2 cups of vinegar. And then to the vinegar and water, I added 1 tablespoon of sugar. The recipe does call for 2 tablespoons of sugar, but I thought that would be a little too sweet for my taste. But you can certainly make it either way. And then we used a tablespoon of pickling salt, or sea salt is what I actually use because it does not have iodine. The iodine will supposedly cause the pickles to be discolored, or the solution to take on a funny color. So if you have pickling salt, it's better to use it if you can. And of course you can see I put a bay leaf in each jar here. And the Mediterranean seasonings that I used were minced fresh oregano. I also put minced fresh basil. I put 2 teaspoons of citrus zest. I zested a lime. I used a 1/4 teaspoon of dried crushed red pepper, 4 cloves of garlic that were crushed and diced, and a couple of small bay leaves. And actually I put 1 bay leaf in each jar rather than 2 bay leaves mixed into the brine. So that is the flavor profile for this particular batch of Mediterranean vegetables. So I'm giving this piece of asparagus a try here. Oh my, it's really good. Tender, crisp. Oh, I can taste the oregano and basil. It's really, really good. Going to be really good on a salad, I think. Wow, delicious. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you all again in the next video. Bye now.